Hi, welcome to my channel. My name is Man the Wall. I talk about history, politics, and whatever else I feel like that day. And today, that thing I want to talk about is music. If you haven't seen the first part of my video, then you probably should do that before you watch this. Basically, I'm ranking every song to hit number 1 on the rock charts in the 2000s. Got that? Good. Now let's get into the second part of this video. A very good and very pretty sounding ballad, only held back by tempo that's just a little bit too slow for my taste. So the general consensus in the broader music critic community is that Jet kinda sucks, and yeah, I do get that. They were an incredibly simplistic and derivative band that were only really ever good at one thing: flagrantly ripping off other better rock artists. And that's Jet on a good day. On a bad day, you get this.
Oh, look what you've done. You've made a fool of everyone.
But with that being said, they were at the very least good at flagrantly ripping off other better rock artists, with this song being a prime example. Yeah, there's not much melody outside those power chords, and this dude's voice is more than a little shouty, but between the surprisingly potent drumming on behalf of Chris Chester and that reasonably catchy chorus, I can see why this is stuck around in the public conscious even after all these years, even if there were several way better bands doing this kind of garage rock niche at the time. And speaking of one of those bands, this song sucks. I don't know why I kinda like it. From a musical and structural standpoint, it's kind of a mess. Jack White has never been an amazing singer, but this is absolutely him at his most shouty. Not to mention the fact that the constant sudden tempo changes make the song feel all kinds of disjointed, and the fact that the solos are all screechy and seem to go on without much direction or real point. It seems more like a demo or a jam session than something that you would release as the lead single for your album. But with that being said, there is something to its impromptu shredding and its memorable lyrics about fucking Mexican chicks, I don't know. That being said, it probably shouldn't have been the lead single, or the song to hit number 1 off this album, as You Don't Know What Love Is, Conquest, and Rag & Bone are all better songs in my opinion. Kind of a midway point between Scar Tissue and Californication that, weirdly enough, is less than both the sum of its parts and both songs individually. Maybe I'm just sick of those pop song chords. Still pretty good though. In terms of songs from the late 2000s about drunken bar fights, Bleed It Out is eons ahead of this one, but it's still a pretty solid track nonetheless. I mean, as far as late period Offspring, I should remind you that it can get worse.
I know you heard that bass bumping in my trunk, bumping in my trunk, bumping in my trunk.
Honestly, I think it's less that I hate this song and more that I'm just baffled that it even exists.
It's a shame we have to die, my dear.
The Foo Fighters are a decidedly out-of-this-world act. I deserve to die.
Check it out. What's it all about?
You know, out of all of the artists I would expect to see on this list, the Beastie Boys definitely aren't one of them. This is my favorite song by them, not even close, but those blasts of sampled horns and the Beasties still being just as energized and potent as they were back on License to Ill is really something to behold, even if this is no intergalactic brass monkey, sure shot, or sabotage in my view.
Wake me up inside. Wake me up inside.
This list is a huge sausage fest, so it's nice to see a band fronted by one of the Femoids for once. As for the actual song, next to In the End, this is more or less the ultimate 2000s edgelord angst anthem, but it's a good song, even if it is just kind of a B-tier Linkin Park cut. But hey, that's still better than Evanescence's other 2 big hits. Mark Hoppus is a better singer than Tom DeLonge, prove me wrong.
My shadow's only one that walks beside me.
In terms of big emotional ballads from American Idiot, Wake Me Up When September Ends and What's Her Name are better than this, but this song will always hold a special place in my heart for one reason. You see, when I went to middle school, I had a piano teacher, a real religious lady. Both her kids went to Christian college, who had me learn this song on the piano. As we were leaving the lesson, she said the following. I don't know why all those Green Day songs are so depressing. You don't have to walk alone. Jesus will walk with you. And Well, even today, as an anti-theist, that's still nothing short of adorable to me. Also, she hated sleeping with sirens for some reason. One of the best music videos of all time. The song is good too, though. One's in the comments section if you thought this was a White Stripes song. So apparently, Trapped are a bunch of chuds, and their lead singer has the same name as one of the most contemptible men in music, which is why I should probably feel more guilty for the fact that I actually really like this song. A better top off of Meteora, as it shows just how versatile, ferocious, and intense Mike Shinoda and especially Chester Bennington were. I don't think we as a society ever realized how powerful and potent a vocalist he was until he was gone, unfortunately. And I think what made him stand out so much was, in comparison to a lot of nu metal bands and singers, Bennington, a man who struggled with drug addiction and who was sexually abused as a child, was someone who could back up some more occasionally pissy and narcissistic attributes of his songwriting with a real genuine emotion and anguish and grit, in a way very few others could. And for that, he will never be forgotten, or at least I hope so. And now it's time for me to have another bad opinion.
Come my lady, come my lady, you're my butterfly, sugar, baby.
So, I imagine that there is probably a substantial proportion of people watching this video who hate this song. And yeah, I see why. It's a terrible flash-in-the-pan nu metal band stealing a riff from John Frusciante to make one of the most ridiculous, over-the-top love songs to ever exist. But to simply quote the Shadow God himself,
even 2 seconds of John Frusciante is better than any amount of nu metal sludge.
Say whatever you will about Crazy Town, they knew a great guitar hook when they heard it, and it's good enough to carry the whole song into something I enjoy listening to way more than I reasonably should. Green Day's album Warning is generally agreed to be one of their weaker offerings. I haven't listened to this album besides this song and the title track, but based off that, it seemed like they were going for a combination of their sound with Dropkick Murphy-style punk rock. And honestly, at least in this case, I think it turned out pretty well, as this song, while nowhere near their best, is a jaunty and lively tune with a great bass line and a very catchy chorus. Although, given the state of affairs in 2020, Billy Joe Armstrong's claim as to wanting to be a minority might fall on deaf ears, if we're being honest. Well, I guess you know what they say, hindsight really is... Hey, do you like the original version of this song but are uncomfortable with the fact that the man who made it may or may not have been a child molester? Well, try this on for size, a cover by some no-name nu metal band that managed to take off in 2001. I mean, this guy isn't quite as good a singer as the King, but he can do those MJ woos pretty well. A very good ballad that's held off from being greater by the fact that it didn't even remotely deserve to be the lead single off this album. I mean, Bleed It Out, Shadow of the Day, and Given Up are all infinitely superior songs to this one, and yet, they didn't stick to the #1 spot for 15 weeks.
If I go crazy, then will you still call me Superman?
You know what? I'll say it. 3 Doors Down is underrated. This honestly isn't even my favorite song by them. Both Be Like That and It's Not My Time are better in my opinion. Still, that is one hell of a chorus.
I'ma do the things that I wanna do. I ain't got a thing to prove to you.
This is how I like my Weezer. Silly, irreverent, and completely bought into its own awesomeness. Greatest man who ever lived is still better though, fight me Crash. Basically the first song you learn no matter what instrument you're playing. Guitar, bass, drums, piano, saxophone, marimba, xylophone, scissor, you name it. And there's a reason for that, which is that this riff is nothing short of iconic. Still kinda wish there was more to this song than just that though. Fun fact by the way, Jack White initially wrote this song with the intent of it being a Bond anthem. It never was obviously, but he did actually get to record one with Alicia Keys in 2008 for the film Another Way to Die. And... it's certainly something, I'll give it that.
Tell me, baby, what's your story?
Probably would have been the great tier if not for this part.
Come and get it, lost it at the city limit. Say goodbye to Dave, but find a way to trim it.
Never been a huge fan of when Anthony Kiedis tries to rap. He's a better singer in my view.
yourself in crowded rooms.
Choose in the comments if you thought the person singing this was a woman. So, I fucked up. Yeah, I said there were 104 songs on this list in the first part of this video. I was wrong. There's 106, which is why I changed the numbering when this video started. Those two songs I forgot were both by the Chili Peppers, and while this song is no scar tissue, it's still an interesting dive into the culture of materialism and excess found in my home state. Also, while we're at it, LA is cringe, San Diego is based, the Chargers are traitors, fight me bro.
I've got another confession to make. I'm your fool.
I was going to put this song in the great tier for the longest time. The parts where Grohl is just singing and the guitar plays in the background are nothing short of beautiful. The melody's fantastic, the lyrics hit hard, it's one of the best things I've ever heard the Foo Fighters do. But as the song progresses and more elements are added, I think it ultimately detracts from the overall experience. Had this song been entirely acoustic or they had replaced the instrumental break with a really good solo, this song would have, without question, been in Despite being one of the dominant acts on this chart in the 90s, U2 largely took a backseat in the 2000s, with this being to date their last song to hit number 1 on this chart. But man, what a note to go out on between that chugging bass line, rip-roaring guitars, and absolutely explosive chorus. As far as U2 goes, this is about as hard as it gets, while still holding on to the ethereal and swelling qualities that made so many of their power ballads all-time classics.
Welcome to a new kind of tension all across the alien nation.
You know, I would actually argue that it was American Idiot, not Dookie, that propelled Green Day to the stardom they're at today. Let me explain. Had American Idiot not come out, what would have Green Day's legacy been? Well, they would have been remembered as a band who had a great album that, like a lot of bands and artists in the 90s, captured the American public's attention and then faded into the background as No Doubt or Oasis or whomever took their place as the it band of the time. But with American Idiot, they established themselves as having genuine longevity, political relevance, and the potential to make music that was progressive, challenging, complex, and thoughtful, a concept album for the ages. As far as this song, this is probably the definitive Iraq war protest anthem, something we were really lacking for reasons that other BreadTube content creators have made videos about that I'll just link in the description. And while this isn't my favorite song on the subject, Helicopter by Block Party and another song that's coming up are a bit better in my view, this one is by far the most iconic. And you know what? Between that enormous chorus and the ferocious guitar and percussion work, that's a legacy it easily deserves.
It just takes some time, little girl, in a little out the ride.
This is more or less the ideal pop punk song. It's basic, instantly catchy, memorable, uplifting, and complete with a driving beat, a solid bass line, and a rip-roaring solo. Still not the best thing this band has ever done, but that's for a little later.
Just how deep do you believe? Will you bite that hand that feeds?
Now this is more like it. Out of all the 9 Inch Nails songs to hit number 1 on this chart, this is the only one that feels like a fully fleshed out and realized piece of music, as opposed to just one of Reznor's wall of sound experiments. I sort of consider this song a spiritual sequel to Head Like a Hole, with a similar lyrical themes and driving beats. Of course, the two are different in other ways. Head Like a Hole was much more seething in its verses before breaking out into one of the best choruses of all time, whereas The Hand That Feeds is loud and driving all throughout, with the distorted bass and electronica elements. Personally, I prefer Head Like a Hole's formula, but that's certainly not a knock against this song. And, well, I don't know about you, but in today's political climate, questioning whether your supposed allies are really on your side is something I can easily relate to. Despite my ambivalent reaction to Love Hurts, Incubus's other 3 big hits on this list were all more than worthy of praise. And while each song is musically different, they're all similar in one aspect, which is that I don't know exactly what to say about all of them. On the one hand, you have Megalomaniac, probably the most powerful and yet also the most ambient of the 3, with its very ethereal verses and bridge standing in stark contrast to its explosive and powerful chorus. For most songs, changes like this would be jarring, but here it feels unbelievably natural. Maybe it's just because both parts are fantastic. On the other hand, you have Animali, easily the most fast-paced and energetic of the two, between the lightning-fast dual guitar riffs that open up the song and the absolutely relentless drum work. And that's not even mentioning the bridge with the ferocious guitar breaks and the pounding percussion leading into the final chorus. I'm honestly shocked that a song like this and Love Hurts are even on the same album. And then you have Drive, probably the one that I have the least to say about. I honestly don't quite know what I like about this song so much. From a structural standpoint, it's pretty bare. The metaphors are simple and easy to understand, and the chord structure is beyond basic. And yet, there's just something about it, isn't there? I don't quite know what it is with this song, or Megalomaniac and Animali for that matter, but whatever it is, it's something strong, as all three songs are nothing short of fantastic in my eyes.
The world I love, the tears I've dropped to be part of the wave can't stop.
You know, as much as every member of the Chili Peppers is a fantastic musician in their own right, I must say, I'm beyond thrilled they got Frusciante back.
What if I say I'm not like the others? What if I say I'm not just another one?
Kick ass. On top of being a wonderfully ethereal, warm, and potent piece from the Peppers, this song is a prime example of how mixing music so that certain elements only appear on the left or the right earbud can be more than just a sloppy gesture, but a true art form. Unfortunately, this video is not. Next to In the End, this is probably Linkin Park's most beloved song. However, unlike In the End, which is kind of worn with time, Numb is just as unbelievably raw and emotionally powerful as it was in 2004. From Bennington's anguished screams of agony to the powerful industrial instrumentation to the well-written lyrics about feeling trapped by parental expectations, this song stands as one of the best hit songs of 2004 and one of the best songs Linkin Park has ever recorded, and it more than deserves to have more than 1 billion views on YouTube. American Idiot might be the more famous of the two, but as far as I'm concerned, Holiday is by far the best Bush protest song on this album. From the driving guitar riff and propulsive percussion work, lyrics that are genuinely provocative as to explaining the underlying socioeconomic factors that drive conflicts like this.
Another protester has crossed the line to find the money's on the other side.
And so much more. But the best part, in my view, is the bridge, where Mike Dirnt lays down what may unfortunately be his last great bass line ever, and through Billy Joel's unhinged screams, we get a merciless portrayal of the neoconservatives of the time, showing them as ruthless, violent, and fascistic. The more things change, the more they say the same, am I right? Out of all the hit songs on this list, this one might be the strangest. Off the top of my head, I can't think of a single other song that combines this many disparate elements: a grooving funk bass line, driving hip-hop percussion, ambient and dreamy guitar sections, 2 rap verses from De La Soul, and an unhinged cackle. And yet, they all seem to come together really well. How? I don't know. But they do, and they combine to make a song that really is something special, unlike anything else I've ever heard. Tomorrow Comes Today and On Melancholy Hill are still better though. So, over the course of this video, you've seen me have some pretty bad takes. I've defended Trapped, I've defended Late Period Offspring, and I've defended Crazy Town. But none of my takes, as cringe as they may have been, I think are quite as bad as these two. So, let's just roll them out.
Cut my life into pieces. This is my last resort. Suffocation, no breathing, don't give a up. Without love, can't get enough.
I don't even know what to say here. I mean, Papa Roach and 3 Days Grace. 2 bands that, if this list is any indication, I'm not a huge fan of. 3 Days Grace have already made the terrible tier, and if Papa Roach had had another song hit #1 on this chart, they probably would have too. And yet, here we are. Both of these songs are in the great tier. And the weird thing is, I don't really know why. Last Resort, for example, is almost laughably melodramatic and not very well sung. I mean, there's White Boy Angst, and then there's this. And then on the other hand, you have Pain, which is one of the most angsty songs I've ever heard. I mean, the chorus is literally just this dude shouting "Pain" at the top of his lungs. And yes, there is something to both songs, isn't there? And I think I can explain why before you just downvote this video, leave a mean comment about my taste in music, and leave. Take Last Resort, for example. A lot of other songs in this genre, like, for example, Scars, this band's other big hit, are sluggish and melodramatic and beyond unimpressive. They're embarrassing, but not embarrassing in an interesting and humorous way. They're embarrassing in the way that your drunk friend screaming at a waiter for messing up a check is embarrassing. But Last Resort is anything but boring. It's loud, it's intense, it's downright exhilarating. It's still whiny, but you do genuinely get the feeling that this man is on the verge of exploding. And there's something to a song like that. And as far as Pain goes, well, for one, like Animal I Have Become, the song has a very good melody, but unlike that song, this guy's voice doesn't really bother me on this song. He doesn't oversell anything. If anything, his voice in the verses is actually kind of reserved, which makes the melody, the gurgling bass line, and the explosive guitar stand out way more. I don't know, but what I do know is that I love both of these songs, and have listened to them way more than I reasonably should, so, hey, I guess that's something. You know, as much as this is one of the most driving, propulsive, and powerful songs on this entire list, I must admit, I'm kinda jiffed that this song became the big hit off this album instead of this. I mean, come on, that's just plain not fair. You know, there are some people out there who think that Sex on Fire is one of the dumbest lyrics of all time. And all I have to say about them is that they are... I mean, a rock song about sex and fire. How can you not love that? Those are the three greatest things in the world. Or the three things that dominate my internet history. Take your pick.
So give me reason to prove me wrong, to wash this memory clean.
You know, I don't think people realize today just how avant-garde and strange a band Linkin Park was. This was a band that combined 9 Inch Nails style industrial metal with Rage Against the Machine style rap rock, and were almost constantly experimenting and trying new things. And yet, they're one of the biggest hitmakers, rock band or not, of the 2000s. That's really something to admire. As far as this song, this is from the second Transformers movie, which I have never seen. Given what I've heard about it...
I am directly below the enemy scrotum.
Yeah, that's probably for the best. But regardless, it made a shit ton of money, and 3 songs from its soundtrack made it onto the 2009 Billboard Year End list. This isn't even my favorite of the 3, that would be the phrase Never Say Never, but it's still a fantastic song. And the weird thing is, in comparison with a lot of other Linkin Park songs on this list, this song really doesn't emotionally resonate with me all that much. But in the place of emotional catharsis, it has stellar instrumentation. The verses are ominous with a fantastic use of industrial-sounding electronica and vocal distortion. The chorus is swelling and powerful with fantastic vocal melody, and the bridge is nothing short of fantastic, with a booming industrial riff embedding his powerful vocals carrying us into the final chorus. It's a fantastic song, and without a doubt, the second best Linkin Park song on this list. As far as what the best one is, well, that's for a little later. This is here for that killer fucking hook. Not even the hook, really, just that one line. No further comment, this song crushes. I find it really weird that this is the killer song that made it on this list and not Mr. Brightside. Maybe it's just because, in retrospect, and at the time, Mr. Brightside was by far the more beloved song off the more beloved album, whereas When We Were Young, while still generally admired and respected, was also an album that was much more mixed in its reaction. But while I do really wish that Mr. Brightside had made it on this list, this is still an absolutely fantastic Springsteen homage that I honestly like about as much as I like a lot of Springsteen's best work, even if there is no Clarence Cummings, sadly. And here we are. What are the 10 best songs hit number 1 on the rock charts? Well, let's find out. You know, there are a lot of great Foo Fighters on this list, obviously, but Foo Fighters are a great band. But I do think that a lot of them lack the all-out intensity and thrash the best material from The Color and the Shape had. That is with the exception of this song, All My Life. Probably the closest thing this band has ever come to making a full-fledged punk song, between the pulsating, ferocious percussion work and relentless guitar shredding. It's not quite my favorite Foo Fighters song, that honor would probably go to Stranger Things Have Happened, but I can't think of another Foo Fighters song this balls to the wall, intense, trashy, and awesome. And speaking of songs that are balls to the wall, intense, trashy, and awesome,
Well, I'm not paralyzed, but I seem to be struck by you.
looking back, I don't think people realize how much this song was a turning point for this band. Let me explain. This is Figure 11, a post-grunge band from Canada. Previous to 2007, most of their big hits were overly serious mid-tempo ballads of average quality. That was until 2007, when the band decided to go for a new look, a stomping, over-the-top dance rock hit. And it worked for them, scoring them one of the biggest rock songs of both 2007 and 2008. I imagine that at the time, a lot of people wrote off this song as a sellout move, a cheap attempt at trying to score for a big mainstream hit without the substance or depth of their previous songs. They were wrong.
A dark lit place, or your place, or my place.
There are better songs here, but I don't think there is a single song on this list that I've listened to over the course of a long period of time. Ever since I first heard it in 2016, it has been on all 4 of my year-end Spotify playlists, a feat that only a small handful of songs can claim. And there's a reason for that. This song just never gets old. Between the elastic yet powerful main guitar riff, Scott Anderson's blunt, powerful vocals, the bizarrely structured and on many occasions incredibly stupid lyrics that I still know by heart, a vast assortment of Quagmire toilet memes, and just about everything in between. Honestly, between this and Falling On, the other big hit off this album, maybe Figure 11 should have just always been a dance rock band. But if it means they make songs like this, then I'm all for that.
Someone like you.
Fun fact, at one point this was my second favorite song of all time. It isn't nowadays, obviously, as I've listened to a lot more since then, but it's still a song I hold near and dear to my heart. Out of all the songs from Kings of Leon's discography, this is probably the one which meshes their southern rock roots with their U2 power pop ambitions the best. The instrumentation here is absolutely fantastic, from that swelling chorus, those huge millennial whoops, the thick, gurgling bass line, energetic and powerful guitar and drum work in the lead up to the chorus, and a very pretty sounding bridge that leads up to a big, epic guitar solo. But what really anchors the song is Caleb Followill. I've always liked him as a singer, but he's at his absolute best here. You feel every breath of emotion he's experiencing and every note he sings. He earnestly yearns to be noticed by someone in his life he loves and cares about. Something I can relate to way too goddamn much, I swear. Yeah, it's kind of an incel anthem, but it's a good incel anthem. It's an incel anthem with weight and emotion and gravitas and swell and beautiful production. And for that, it's Kings of Leon's biggest hit, and as far as I'm concerned, probably their best. This was the very last song hit number 1 on this list, and what a tune to end out the decade. For the unfamiliar, this song is the opening track on Muse's 2009 album The Resistance, where Muse experimented with more symphonic and electronic elements for a concept album loosely based on George Orwell's 1984, my all-time favorite novel. In comparison with a lot of the album, however, Uprising is much more mainstream, direct, and streamlined. And while some prefer this band at the most theatrical and over-the-top, for me, Muse is at their best and their most straightforward, raucous, and powerful, and thankfully, this is some of that. This song is more or less one big crescendo. The first verse and chorus are seizing, the second verse and chorus are more powerful with the additional guitar riffs, and after a thumping bridge, it all comes rolling back in an explosive and epic final chorus. It's 5 minutes long and it gets better and better the more it goes on, something very few songs can say. Out of all the songs on this list, besides maybe the song that topped it, this one is by far the most anthemic. And for that, it's more than worthy of a spot this high on this countdown.
From yesterday, it's coming.
30 Seconds to Mars is a deeply, deeply frustrating band. They're capable of making not just good music, but music that is soaring, anthemic, and outright gorgeous. And yet they keep wasting their potential with material that is by comparison ludicrously unimpressive. I mean, come on, Jared Leto! You spent the last 5 years doing your shitty trap rock thing, and your shitty Joker thing, and your shitty live show thing. It's just, you can be so good! Why can't you just be good? This song is nothing short of humongous. This is Wall of Sound production at its absolute best, with the guitar and percussion work sounding nothing short of titanic. That's honestly the best word to describe this song. titanic. It just has an almost otherworldly feeling of power and opulence, and it's all carried by Jared Leto, who transitions between subtle whispers and furious screams absolutely flawlessly. There are very few songs I can think of which manage to combine elements with different dynamics as seamlessly as this song does. And yeah, it's pretentious. It's basically about nothing. The only lyric that's really worth noting is the one they ripped from KT Tunstall. I don't care. Some songs have a swell and bravado big enough to make meaningless lyrics not matter, and this is absolutely one of them.
It takes my pain away. It's a lie. Kiss with open eyes.
Told you we'd see Jimmy Eat World again. There are some songs that capture a singular emotion so well that they basically become synonymous with that emotion for me. For this song, that emotion is pure, unrestrained panic. It's dark, it's intense, it's throbbing at points, but it's also an exhilarating song, the kind that makes you feel like your heart is going to fucking explode. And that's what I get from it, through two main avenues. One are the lyrics, which portray a rather grim picture of a man struggling with addiction, both to drugs and his relationship, trying to keep himself together despite the fact that he's drowning in his own pain and insecurities. And the second is the absolutely top-notch instrumentation. There are so many individual details I love here, from the stomping clap of the percussion, the way the bass drops in during the second half of the verse, the different guitar melodies that come in on the second verse and the bridge, the ferocious hi-hats on the second verse, the blaring, distorted guitars on the chorus, and to top it all off, you have, I'm just gonna say it, the best solo on this list. I like a lot of what I've seen Jimmy Eat World do, but as far as I've heard, they've never made another song quite like this, and I'm not sure they ever will. But I hope they do one day, because if we can have another pain in the world, that really would take my pain away. And here's a song that's almost Pain's polar opposite, one of the most lively, gleeful, quotable, and optimistic songs you'll find out there. Everything from its quirky guitar plucks, jaunty percussion, driving bass groove, and dreamlike production give this song a cheerful but nevertheless incredibly interesting vibe. And that chorus is endlessly sing-alongable. Trust me, I know. But honestly, I think what I appreciate most about this song is the sentiment. I don't know if you know this, but the world is in a pretty shitty place at the moment. And, well, I don't know about you, but a song that reminds the world that no matter what happens, good news will work its way into all our plans is a song that has made itself more or less timeless. Godspeed, you modest mouse. Godspeed.
I hear Jerusalem bells are ringing, Roman cavalry choirs are singing.
You know what? I'm gonna say it. I like Coldplay. Pretty much always have. Even if, as far as big British bands of the 2000s, they weren't nearly as experimental or interesting as Radiohead or Muse or Snow Patrol, they always had a knack for great pop hooks that served them well even today. But with that said, even most of Coldplay's most adamant critics would probably admit that this is their best song. And I honestly don't know what else to say about it. Not only because it feels like everyone else has covered the song in some form or another, but because it's just kind of a bit boringly perfect, isn't it? I mean, beautiful instrumentation, a simple yet engaging melody, a simple yet engaging narrative, it's emotional, it's powerful, the references to everything from Christianity, the French Revolution, and the Roman Empire give the song a uniquely timeless feeling. Really, it's got everything, and there really isn't anything like it. It's one of my favorite songs of all time for sure, but there were still two songs that hit me in the gut a bit harder than this one did. So, what were they?
I don't know what's worth fighting for, or why I have to scream.
It's kind of weird to me that I seem to be way in the minority as far as thinking that Breaking the Habit is a significantly better song than Numb. Numb is a great rock song in my view, but I won't deny that, like a lot of Linkin Park's work, it can feel melodramatic. Angst and aggression can very easily turn around and come off as try-hard and forced rather than genuinely emotional. Numb doesn't fall into that trap all that much, but I would be lying if I said it wasn't a bit of a problem. But none of that applies even the slightest to Breaking the Habit. And the weird thing is that, despite this being the best Linkin Park song, it's probably the most avant-garde for them. There's no distorted guitars or punchy electronica, it's carried by lush orchestrals and a looping guitar melody and racing percussion. And yet, at least for me, not only is it better sounding than any of Linkin Park's big, stomping rock ballads, I mean, this song just sounds gorgeous, but it's also more intense. And at the center of that is Chester Bennington, who makes this song what it is. This is his best performance, hands down, because more than any other Linkin Park song, this shows off his ability to convey emotion through his delivery. Every single feeling he lays out bare is feelings of hopelessness, loss, and confusion. And his conviction to rise above all of that and start over again a new man is conveyed flawlessly. And all of that leads into the bridge, which is not only the best part of the song, but it's probably one of my favorite moments in any song ever. Every single scream out of Bennington's mouth is nothing short of bone-chilling, as he vents every bit of his self-hatred and rage and pain out of the world and vows to rise above all of it. An absolutely phenomenal song, an underrated gem, a modern classic, and without a doubt, at least in my view, the best thing Linkin Park has ever recorded. What on earth could have been better? Well... At the end of the day, what else could it have been? Well, I had a ton of fun making this video, looking back at the music of this fascinating decade for rock music. At the end of the day, there was a level at which this video was kind of boring. Because before I even typed out a single word of the script, recorded a single second of the audio, or edited a single frame, I knew this would be the song to top this list. Because this song, Welcome to Black Parade, is, to me, without question, my favorite rock song of all time. And I would argue one of the best songs ever written. It's the kind of song that belongs in the pantheon of all-time great rock ballads, along with the likes of Let It Be, Stairway to Heaven, and Bohemian Rhapsody. And, at least in my view, it surpasses all three in quality. So, what makes me love this song so much? Well, I mean, what isn't there? This is probably the only song in the world I would call exhaustingly amazing. It's one of the most intricate things I've ever heard, and every time I hear it, I find something new to appreciate. From the iconic opening piano riffs, that marching band percussion, the triangles, the rip-roaring guitar work, the absolutely phenomenal tempo change, the punchy and relentless rhythm section work that leads into one of the best choruses of all time, the titanic and swelling bridge that leads into the key change, the horns on the final chorus. I could probably keep going if I wanted to. Every single second of this song is amazing. The opening alone makes you think they played their trump card too early, but it keeps going. The chorus alone makes you think they played their trump card too early, but it keeps going. The key change alone makes you think that they played their trump card too early, but it keeps going and going and going, getting better and better with every second they have. But that alone wouldn't make the song worthy of being the greatest rock ballad of all time. But what I think does has to do with what the song conveys. A song like Bohemian Rhapsody, for example, while an operatic masterpiece, isn't really about much of anything. And that's the case with a lot of the all-time great rock ballads, honestly. They get a pass on their epic wall of sound production alone, and they deserve it. But with this song, My Chemical Romance went the extra mile. This song is the centerpiece of the Black Parade album. By now, the main protagonist of the album, a patient dying of cancer, has left the world of the living to join the dead on their endless march forward. A rather sad subject, but MCR managed to make it into something anthemic, as the patient realizes that even though he's dead and gone, his memory will carry on. And as long as those in life remember him, he will be beyond death. Which is honestly a message so emotionally moving and powerful to me, I don't really think I know what to say as far as describing how I feel about it. And I get the feeling that as I get older, as more and more people leave my life, this is only something that's going to become more important to me. This song is powerful enough to make accepting death become an anthemic and personal conquest. And for that, and for so many reasons and more, if I could even list them, Welcome to the Black Parade is the best song to hit number 1 on the Billboard rock charts in the 2000s, and one of my favorite songs of all time. So that was the list. That ran long, and honestly it took me way longer than I should have. Altogether we have 10 terrible songs, 7 bad songs, 10 mess songs, 24 decent songs, 25 good songs, and 30 great songs. Tallying it up, that gets us a 349 out of 530. A pretty decent scoring, all things considered. Thank you to everyone who watched this video. Next week I'm going to go back into talking about politics again, but this was still an incredibly fun project for me to put into motion. I'm Man the Wall, don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.